Blue Jackets stopped their 5-game losing skid thanks to Elvis Merzlikins. Did this message finally get through to Elvis, or is it just another one-off before he returns to his usual play? We're going to talk about that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $150 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Let's talk about last night's win. Because was it the best game that I've seen the Blue Jackets play? No. Was it the kind of game that they needed to play? Yeah, kind of. Monster night for Elvis Merzlikins as he faced down, I think, almost as many shots from the Hughes brothers specifically as the entire Blue Jackets roster shot the puck. But a 40-save performance from him, a 4-0 lead with 3 minutes left or something like that. They scored twice with the extra man. Their first goal was scored at 17-10, and they had to have Elvis lying on his back in the crease to score it. So again, a great effort from Elvis, which is something I kind of want to talk about in this first segment. 2 goals from Sean Monahan and an assist as well. He is back, baby, and again, not like the best team performance I've ever seen, but it was good enough. The power play was 50%. The penalty kill was 100%. Zach Werenski, great to see him get a goal. Great to see Ivan Provorov get a goal. And honestly, with Dante Fabro out of the lineup, I thought it might be more of an abject disaster. But they muscled through. So we'll talk about a couple of these things, and then I've got one final section of the fellas over at Locked On NHL Prospects are talking about prospects that are not yet in the organization. So guys that are still in junior, guys that are in Europe, things like that. So we're going to play a little chunk of that as well, just to finish off the week here. But I wanted to mostly kind of talk today about Elvis because he was excellent last night. 40 saves on 42 shots. What's that good for? Like a 950 save percentage, something like that. He had a 952 save percentage, which is not his best performance of the season, but is pretty up there. And I think probably some of that lies on the fact that the Devils were just pouring on the shots. The Blue Jackets got outshot 17-8 in the second period and then 18-6 in the third period after a relatively sleepy first period where shots were 7-6 in favor of the Devils. The goaltending held up, and I do wonder how much of it is that Elvis was due a good game, because if you've been if you're an everydayer, or if you're someone that pays attention to goalie stats, you know that Elvis usually has a couple of good games and then a couple of not so good games, and then a couple of good games, and then a couple of not so good games. So he was due a good game. However, a performance like this, immediately after losing the net for 3 games to a 23-year-old undrafted player that's that's only really been in the NHL and has, I think, 13 career NHL games to his name as of getting sent back down to Cleveland. I wonder if that was a little bit of a wake-up call for Elvis. I wonder if it is just that he needed the rest, which is kind of worrying in and of itself, because we're only, a third of the way through the season, not even halfway through the season, and he's already kind of, cited fatigue at least a couple of times, which makes me wonder, is there something kind of deeper going on there? But whatever the reason, he's rested, he's back. Will it last is my question. And I would love to believe that it will last. However, we've seen this film before and we didn't like the ending. Sorry to quote Taylor Swift at you, but I feel like at least once a season we see this of Elvis get sat, and then he comes back and he's excellent in his first game back. And we're like, oh, okay, great. Elvis is back. It worked. This time it finally got through to him. And I don't know, at a certain point, it's just kind of the natural inconsistencies of goaltending, because the goaltending is made of voodoo and nonsense. And Elvis was due a good game. He has been extremely up and down this season. His last 5 games, including the Devils, he's had a save percentage of .952, .857, .800, .960 against Winnipeg. He was excellent in that game as well. And then a .750 against Vancouver. So, up and down, up and down, up and down. He's brought his season save percentage up to an .891, which is not great, but is, almost league average. I feel like league average this season, I feel like it's like an .897 or something. So a couple more good games and we should be kind of getting back into that level of play. But I'm just wary of, and I do this all the time. I'm guilty of it as well, of being like, well, maybe this time will be different, and maybe this time it will be different, but I'm not super confident of that fact. I do think that we should just kind of enjoy the good Elvis games as and when we get them. I think that there's nothing wrong with looking at that game last night and being like, yes, Elvis was amazing in that game. I don't know that it means that he's suddenly going to be the savior of the team, and we're not going to get his rookie season. What was it? 5 shutouts in 8 games stretch. I don't think we're going to get anything close to that level of play. But if you spend every moment of the season waiting for the other shoe to drop about Elvis, then you're just going to get exhausted, So enjoy it while it lasts. We'll see what happens. The Blue Jackets play the Flyers tomorrow night, and then they have the Canadiens on Monday. So 2 ostensibly easy-ish games. The Flyers are kind of falling apart a little bit at the minute, and the Canadiens are just not very good this season. However, both of those teams are together are 3-0 against the Blue Jackets this season. So it's not like it's going to be an easy. Not like it's going to be an easy 2 games. It should be a relatively easy 4 points. I don't think it's going to be. I would expect to see Elvis at least one, if not both. And at some point, we're going to have the conversation about Neil Tarasov about, they talked about how he was rusty, but are not really doing anything to kind of knock the rust off. And I get that he has been, unplayably bad, but also you've got this combination of one goalie's playing too much and one goalie's not playing enough. And your solution is to continue to not play the goalie that's not playing enough. I don't know, man. I get it. You want to ride the quote unquote hotter hand, but at a certain point, you've either got to admit that you can't play Tarasov and do something about it, or you've got to suck it up and play Tarasov, and the fact that you don't trust your backup goalie feels like a problem, because this is not, the days of they can play 70, 75, 80 games. It just isn't. Elvis's career high, I think, is 30-something. Elvis's career high is he started 56 games in the 21-22 season, which was kind of his last good season before it started really going kind of downhill from there. But since then, he's played 30 games and then 41 games last season, and then he's played 21 so far this season. So you're not going to get, you might get 60 games out of Elvis, but I don't think you will, because that would mean he would have to play basically, I think, over 70. I think he'd have to play 75% of the remaining games, and that's just not going to happen. So you need to have a backup that you can trust if your starting goalie is only going to play 50, 55 games a season, if that, So I don't know what the solution is there. Like, is the, I'm thinking about Caden Primo in Montreal, for example, who has also been struggling. Like, do you do a Tarasov for Primo swap and see what happens there? I still think that the plan might be to send him down to Cleveland, probably after the holidays at this point, because the roster freeze went into effect last night. So I think they can only like emergency call guys up. And I don't think that they have a roster space to do that unless someone goes on IR. But anyway, I still think that's going to be the move. I still think they're going to try and sit him for as much of Christmas as they can. And then when the roster freeze is lifted, that was way harder than it needed to be. When the roster freeze is lifted after Christmas and after New Year, I think, I don't know off the top of my head when the roster freeze lifts, send him to Cleveland for 2 weeks, conditioning, get him to play as many games as you can fit in down there, and then see where you're at. But like, is there an option where you do a backup goalie swap? Colorado did it. They swapped Eustace Noonan for Scott Wedgwood, and I think they sent a pick as well. And that worked out, okay for them. I do think that like Caden Primo is really the only name on my list in terms of goalies that are not signed super long term and are struggling and are kind of on a similar level as Tarasov. But like, I don't know. I'm loath to send anything else to Montreal in case they make a reclamation project out of it again. But like, something has to be done because Elvis is tired and Tarasov is rusty, and that feels like a really solvable problem. And for some reason, it just isn't. So we'll see. I want to talk a little bit more about the game, about the things that I enjoyed, the things that I didn't enjoy, and then we'll talk about prospects. So we're going to take a very quick break, and then when we get back, let's talk about Sean Monahan here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks. It's the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when those picks inevitably hit, because you're going to be great at this, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Speak on PrizePicks. This is a really great one. Jack Hughes, more than 4 shots on goal. That would have been a really easy one to take because he had 13 of them last night. I'm also looking at Artemi Panarin to have more than 1 assist. Really easy to make my picks. I can have fun with friends and I can cash out fast. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly with code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly. PrizePicks. Run your game. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk about Sean Monahan, who had an excellent night, 2 goals, an assist. I know that I'm loath to give credit for an empty net goal. You know this about me. I am surprised that it was an unassisted one because I do think that credit should be given to Cole Sillinger for taking it personally about Jack Hughes having the puck, just forcibly taking it away from him, but it is what it is. It did feel a little bit like Cole Sillinger was out to get the Hughes brothers specifically. He had a huge hit on Luke Hughes. Obviously, he took the puck away from Jack Hughes at the end there. Luke Hughes goal and assist on the night. Jack Hughes just 1 assist, but as mentioned, 13 shots on goal, which is too many shots. Too many shots on goal for one player. Luke Hughes followed that up with 6 shots on goal for second place. Timo Meier had 4. Stefan Nason had 3. But then when you look at the Blue Jackets, Sean Monahan had 3. Ivan Provorov had 3. No one else had more than that. So, like, you could take, I think, like 4 or 5 Blue Jackets and still not get as many shots on goal as Jack Hughes had last night. And again, credit to Elvis for shutting him down. Yeah, Sean Monahan, great performance. Is still continuing to do it with like under 20 minutes of ice time, which is impressive. Something that did impress me is Mathieu Olivier. Skated more than any other Blue Jackets forward. He had almost 20 and a half minutes of ice time last night, which shocked me a lot because I don't even think, okay, they did play a lot of 5-on-5. There was only 3 power plays all game, 2 for the Blue Jackets and 1 for the Devils. So, Mathieu Olivier kills penalties sometimes. But I'm willing to bet that probably at least 19 of those minutes were at 5-on-5, which is truly wild. I do wonder how much of that was getting stuck on the ice at the end of the game, because Sheldon Keefe pulled the goalie with like 6 minutes left, which I do respect, to be clear. I do respect a really early goalie pull. It did make things extremely difficult for the Blue Jackets, and they did almost do the comeback. So, like, it clearly, it so very almost worked, you know? But, like I said, it did make things difficult for the Blue Jackets. Mathieu Olivier had 17 minutes of 5-on-5. Which means that 3.5 minutes. I do think most of that 3.5 minutes was. I can figure this out. Actually, he didn't play on the penalty kill last night, so 3.5 minutes were when he was stuck on the ice at the end there with the goalie pulled. So credit to him. Very funny that he got the donkey hat and not Elvis. The team really loves him, which is fun to see. But I thought he had a good game. I like that line a lot. The Sillinger. Olivier, I believe Aston Reese line. It just kind of, it does exactly what you want it to do, you know? It just kind of goes out there and is kind of unpleasant to play against. The only really great line was, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. I'm so glad they gave Sean Monahan his Russians back, because clearly that's what's been missing from this team. And I get that you want to try different things, but like, you put Voronkov and Marchenko back up on that top line, and suddenly Monahan is scoring and is everywhere, and is, you know, that line is leading the team in creation of offense. Like, they had 13 shot attempts at 5-on-5 with that line. The other three lines together had 18 shot attempts. So like, they were the only line that had a positive shot attempt differential. So thank you for giving his Russians back, and don't take them away again, because clearly whatever it is working. I think it's probably mostly that it's a him and Marchenko thing as opposed to a him and specifically Russians thing. But Marchenko and Voronkov work well together, so I'm willing to, to let that be for now. They still got to figure out Adam Fantilli. Like, James Van Riemsdyk isn't getting it done. That line got caved in at even strength, and like individually it wasn't great either. Ken Johnson was on the ice for 3 shot attempts total and 17 against. James Van Riemsdyk four shot attempts for 19 against. Adam Fantilli 6 shot attempts for 20 against, all at even strength. So again, that line not working. Something needs to change there. Don't know what it is. Hopefully Chinikov comes back soon, because I do think that might be the missing link for that line. Whatever it is, James Van Riemsdyk is not it. Credit to the special teams as well. Didn't allow a power play goal. Scored a power play goal. Great. Love to see it. More of that. Very, very low special teams game, which probably is in the favor of the Blue Jackets, because a lot of their strength is at even strength. But I'm not going to complain about that. And overall, I think it was a great game. I think when you're getting doubled up on shots and then some by another team, then something has clearly gone wrong. But Elvis stood tall. We just have to hope that that something has sunk in from this latest round of message sending to the goaltending of the Blue Jackets. So we'll see. Blue Jackets play tomorrow night against the Flyers. So on Monday, we will check in about that. And hopefully I will be less annoyed than the last time these two teams faced off against each other, but we'll see. Before I go, I'm going to take one more quick break, and then I've got another chunk of prospect talk for you guys. I know Oiva Keskinen is going to be in the conversation. Luca Morelli and Luca Pinelli both talked about as well. So that's coming up in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app also gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and all other sports all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have 17 different ESPN tabs open. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, if you win your first $5 bet, you're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Here with our final segment, look at the junior and other prospects in the Columbus Blue Jackets prospect pool. We'll start off with Caden Lindstrom here, who has been injured so far this season. Basically is out for, an extended amount of time. I don't think there's an exact timeline on his return, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So updates on that side are going to have to wait. But Lindstrom as a prospect, still worth talking about, right?
Totally. He was drafted 4th overall for a reason. He's a hulking centerman. And while, yes, I think that the injuries are a concern. Not playing any hockey by the time that December of your D+1 rolls around isn't ideal. But he's just such a fantastic, intelligent, creative two-way player. With the puck on his stick, whether it's the handling skill, the playmaking, the goal scoring especially, there's so many standout parts of his offensive toolkit. And you add to that the utter peskiness that is playing against Caden Lindstrom. He is not a fun player to play against at all. He's physical, he's nasty. He's the kindest of people off the ice, but he's anything but on the ice when the competition ramps up. He's a player that you want on your team come playoff time. Of course, staying healthy is paramount for his development and his value at the NHL level, but I wouldn't be too concerned at this stage. He's still just an 18-year-old kid. We'll see how things even out, but I'm curious to see how he'll look once he is back playing in the WHL for the Medicine Hat Tigers. The combination of him and Gavin McKenna is probably the best in the entire WHL, so really hoping that they can be reunited shortly. But what are kind of your hopes for this season for Caden Lindstrom once he does return from injury? I assume it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get rolling again, but what could Columbus Blue Jackets fans hope to see from his progression this year?
Yeah, so I think, in terms of the progression, learning how to play with highly skilled players like Gavin McKenna is going to be very important for him because he's very much a drive the net, play hard, move hard, kind of do everything at your highest possible level of energy and speed type of player. But learning to slow down the game, learning to play a bit more of that give and go, kind of subtle, kind of finesse game is going to be very important for him because if we can bring that in a 6'4" frame with the level of pace, with the level of energy and physicality that already has, it's going to be phenomenal for his game. We know he's a deft passer, but he passes at high speeds. We know he's a deft shooter, but he also shoots at high speeds. I'm looking to see what Lindstrom does with a lower kind of pace level. I need to see different gears. I don't like prospects who have one gear and it's first gear, but there's also some merit to having multiple gears when your only gear is fourth gear, right? There needs to be some sort of balance there. So I'm looking forward to see how Lindstrom kind of works with that. So it's going to be very interesting for his kind of progression. There's also a couple of very interesting prospects in the OHL as well, doing pretty good. The two Lucas, Luca Morelli and Luca Pinelli, have been pretty good. I think both of them have earned World Juniors call-ups, right, to the camp? Or is it just Pinelli? I think Morelli got called up too, right?
I know Pinelli got called up. I wouldn't be shocked if Morelli had as well. I maybe want to check that out.
Yeah, while you check that out, just to give you the breakdown on Morelli, he's got 50 points in 40 games. He's been doing absolutely phenomenal in the OHL. Is absolutely tearing, well, not 50 and 40, it's 40 and 30, right? It's 40 and 30. Yeah, okay, I'm not confused. It's 40 and 30, and he's doing that from the blue line, playing a very, very important role for his team over in the OHL. Overall, he's always been this offensively gifted kind of player, but didn't really get too much of an opportunity to let that shine last year in his draft year, but still got selected by the Columbus Blue Jackets, and so far that decision has been looking very, very good for them. So yeah, has he been a call-up for the World Juniors roster?
He is not. He was beaten out by Cameron Allen.
That's certainly a decision.
That's a decision that was made. He's been very good for Oshawa, as you mentioned. But to move on to Luca Pinelli, a player that I've watched more of than probably any other NHL prospect today in terms of live viewings. A player I like a bunch and that has been called up to the World Junior selection camp for Team Canada, to the surprise of many, especially considering the names that were not brought, like Michael Misa, for instance. But Pinelli is a goal-scoring leader of a player, high motor, never gives up on plays, keeps his feet moving, and the shot has just been dominant at the OHL level. He was, I believe, third in OHL scoring last year with 48 and 68. He's again towards the top of that list this season with 20 goals in 25 games for the Ottawa 67s, and he has really been the offensive driver of that team. It's been him and Henry Muse in terms of generating offense and limited value beyond that pairing for the 67s this season. And Pinelli is a really smart, intense, goal-scoring centerman who can put in some effort defensively, is an underrated playmaker in my opinion. He's just been mainly playing with playmakers, so he's been adopting the goal-scoring role in recent seasons, and a really solid prospect for the Blue Jackets. He's not a slam dunk NHLer. I mean, this is an undersized forward that we're talking about that always comes with his own fair share of question marks at 5'9" and 168 pounds. He certainly isn't the biggest guy, but give him a couple of years in the AHL, and I think that you're getting a really reliable depth scorer in a bottom six capacity in the NHL someday. But to move on to the next ones, let's talk about William Whitelaw in the NCAA, who's, I believe, at half a point a game this season, right?
Yeah, for sure. He plays for the University of Michigan. He was one of the multiple freshmen to join their ranks this year. Played on and off on a second line of Michael Hage before Hage got called up. Then when Hage got called up, Whitelaw kind of tapered off production-wise, but he's still very, very skilled, high-end playmaker, really, really solid hands. But there's still a lot of question marks around his off-puck game, his off-ice situation. There's a lot of things going on around William Whitelaw, and I don't think that'll really I don't think that tampers his upside really that much, but his off-puck game really needs to come some ways. Very much a get the puck and try something type of forward. But I want to see a bit more from him. We also need to talk about Charlie Ellick, who's a massive right shot defenseman who they just drafted this past year. Not really much going on production-wise, but he's still a defensive stalwart. Haven't seen enough progression so far, but we're talking about one off season and a couple of months of draft play, of junior play. So it's quite normal that we haven't seen anything major from Ellick, who is already a pretty polished defensive player. I want to see a bit more activation, a bit more offensive dare, but he's still a stalwart from the blue line, shoots the lights out of the puck from that blue line, and creates a lot of opportunities for his teammates. But I think the most interesting of this bunch is Oiva Keskinen, who was drafted in the 7th round in 2023, and so far is almost at a point per game in Finnish Liga, right?
Yeah, Oiva Keskinen has 20 points in 29 Liga games so far this season, coming off a fantastic rookie season last year where he put up 27 points in 54 games right after being drafted in the 7th round by the Blue Jackets in 2023. So very quick progression for Keskinen. He's been moving up the lineup with Tappara in Liga, playing 16, 17, 22 minutes a night some nights, really playing a big role for that team and bringing a lot of speed and playmaking ability to the equation. In terms of NHL upside, I definitely think that we're looking at a player that could play minutes someday now, which I had not thought in his draft year. So a really good find for the Blue Jackets scouting staff here. But I still think he's going to need a couple seasons to really adjust. He's a decent enough frame, I guess, at 6 feet, 181 pounds. He's not a small forward by any means, but I think adding a little bit more weight and being able to play through contact a little bit better would serve him very well once he does make the adjustment to the NHL. But to wrap up the segment and the show, we have 2 more goaltenders here to talk about. And let's start off here with Sergei Ivanov, who was a 5th round selection in 2022 by Columbus. An interesting profile for a goaltender. He's 6 feet tall, 157 pounds, very undersized as far as netminders are concerned, but he's been playing fantastic hockey these past 2 seasons. Last year, playing with Admiral Vladivostok in the KHL, he played 33 games and had a .928 save percentage as a 19-year-old. And this season, he's been playing with HK Sochi, which is not one of the KHL's best teams. And he's put up a .906 save percentage with a pretty rough record ahead of him with 6 wins and 14 losses. So the team isn't good, but he's playing some solid hockey. Not quite as dominant as last season, but it's also a worse team than he played on last year. So very interesting player. But to wrap up the show, Hattie, talk me through Evan Gardner, who was an interesting prospect on the goaltending side last season and has been off to a pretty good start this year, right?
Yeah, for sure. He plays for the Saskatoon Blades in the dub. Had a really great record last year. 920 plus save percentage, was very, very solid in the crease. But when you look at his game, technically in terms of, the abilities, the on puck kind of confidence and comfort, there's a lot of questions, more questions than answers for sure when it comes to what Gardner brings to the game. Not particularly mobile, not particularly strong technically, kind of just average across the board. But so far, it works really well. I think his best attribute is his mental kind of processing of the game. Reads the game really well, almost always in the right positions, almost always tracking the puck really well. So, you can't count out these players that are smarter and end up having better production than what their tools would suggest. Whether they're forwards, defensemen, or goalies, that's still the same case. So I wouldn't count them out. He's been looking pretty good this year. The numbers have taken a bit of a dip. That's mainly because Saskatoon's a bit less of a good defensive team this year. But we'll see how his kind of progression continues.
And that's all I've got for you today. Like I said earlier, the second segment, back on Monday, we will be talking about the Flyers game that happens on Saturday, all the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes from that. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at _Blue Jackets. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, Podbean, Stitcher, Audible, all of the places. And also on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed over on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button over there. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, or until Monday, I should say, make sure you stay locked on.